Planning and organizing. This is my weak spot. Planning and organizing. That's why I came like 2 minutes before my talk with 80-something people. Right? Professionalism. Right? There's a reason that we dress appropriately. That I wore a collared shirt with some slacks today versus my comfortable sweatpants or gym shorts, right? The example I use there too is athletics. There's a difference between professional and amateur athletes, and not only the product on the field, on the court, but also those expectations after and outside, right? That professionalism is also in corporate America, in the workforce. Things like empathy. Empathy. Understanding literally a person's frame of reference. Goal setting. It's important to set attainable goals, smart goals, however you want to do it, but goal setting. Media rules. Like, don't pull your cell phone out when I'm giving a presentation. I'm just kidding, unless you're taking notes, that's fine. But during an interview, right, make eye contact, have a firm handshake. Right? Don't just Snapchat a problem, maybe like help that person out, right? And then communication skills, two-way street. Not only that you verbally or non-verbally communicate to someone, but receiving that signal, and those communication skills too, those non-verbal communication skills, that eye contact. I just talked to someone earlier today, she's a guidance counselor, she says she has students come into her office, she's on the phone, they just sit down, and they expect her to say, hold on, I'll call you back, and they're the most important thing in the room, right? And I was like, yeah. When in fact they should stay outside and say, can I come in? And she'll give them the 1 minute finger, right? And then they can come in after she finishes the phone call. Or communication skills. Now if we look at the dictionary definition of soft skills, they are personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. Okay, you couple that with emotional intelligence, which is what they talk about in the corporate world. The capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. It's about interaction with yourself and others and how to handle those emotions. Right? These two things are related. And I'll get into when I talk about the assessment and the curriculum, how more so this makes sense and tie it together. Now this is one of my favorite, and I know those in the back can't see this, they're probably in the front because they're small, I had to like shrink this down. This was a study done by the American Association of Colleges and Universities. Okay? What they did was they went out to employers and they said, hey, what learning outcomes do you guys, employers, the point of job readiness, right, get them a job, rate as important? Working effectively in teams with others, written communication, ethical judgment and decision making, applying knowledge and skills to the real world, analyzing and solving complex problems, locating, organizing, evaluating information, being innovative and creative, working with numbers and stats, analyzing and solving problems with people from different backgrounds. So here we have down here, working with numbers and stats, right, so that's math. Whereas if we go down the list of the other 9, they're all soft skills. Communication, teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking. Some food for thought, right? Employers are saying these are the learning outcomes that they rate as important. Because no matter, no offense to the robotics, that's some cool stuff out there, no matter how autonomous or robotic that we get in this world, or AI, students still need to be able to work with people. Bottom line. There was a study done about ATMs when they first came out, about how they would reduce bank teller jobs. And it was going to take away from the industry, and they were scared and saying, man, this technology is going to be brutal. When in fact what happened was it exponentially grew the banking industry because they were able to open up more branches at less of a cost because they didn't have the personnel. So geographically speaking, these branches opened up and created more jobs because they didn't have to have multiple people staffing one site, one location. Those examples, those things happen every single day. There's a manufacturer by us in Wisconsin who talked about how autonomous forklifts, and it was talking about how, hey, we're losing jobs. When in fact now that job isn't driving the forklift, it's working on it because it's electronics and robotics, right? So now that's a job. created that wasn't there 5, 10, 15 years ago. So bottom line, you need to be able to work with people. My second favorite graphic, which is why it's on here. Turnover process. What this says is that companies hire for a reason. They're going to hire people because of their knowledge and experience, their credentials, their personality, that initial, man, he aced the interview, right? But the reason that people lose their jobs are reason number 3. All the things that you guys mentioned, right? And it maybe was a different variation, but these are all emotional skills. These are all soft skills, right? Very rarely do I, and I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen, but very rarely do I hear the reason that he or she lost his job is because he didn't weld properly, right? He put the wrong IV on the rack, right? It's always the things you mentioned. The turnover process. Now, the thing about the turnover process is it can be very expensive. This is what costs people and companies a lot of money. They hire, they train, they fire, and they gotta hire and train and fire, right? It's very cyclic. It costs a lot of money to do that. So the whole point of incorporating soft skills into a program, right, into your lives, is to eliminate that cycle. So it's just hire, train. All right? Imagine if Johnny came in to school with a bad attitude. Right? He and his mom got into an argument. So he forgot his homework. And then he got into class late. And then he's disruptive because his head's not in the right spot, which we've all had this happen, right? And then what happens? We maybe give him a couple warnings, but if it's constant, then we write him up, send him to the principal's office, whatever, we kick him out of class. Not knowing what happened and the fact that he wasn't able to compartmentalize that thing that happened at 7:30 this morning with mom. So in the real world, that's turnover. You just fired him, you kicked him out of class, right? And that's expensive. And it can be really expensive if you don't know what you're looking for. So, for those of you that have the old school pen and paper, I'm one of those guys, I love technology, I love pen and paper. I have a project, and for those of you that have either attended a webinar, have seen us, have attended a talk, have done this, shut up, don't tell anyone. I want you to connect all 9 dots using 4 straight connected lines. You feel the pun, right? Think outside the box. Now obviously this is a literal example. It was supposed to get you laughing. I think 2 people did, that's fine. You can steal this if you want. But how many of us, students, colleagues, loved ones, stay inside the box of life, do things the way they've been doing them because they work when they don't, but let's continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Because that's the definition of, right? And we're all guilty of it, myself included. It takes a step back, climb up on the ladder, look down and see the eagle-eye view of what's really going on. How do we fix these things? What are we going to do? All right? And this is a rhetorical question, but even though we know the answer, sometimes we do the formula, right? Someone, who would you rather have working for you? Someone who just does what they're told, or someone who can think creatively about problems and identify new and better solutions? Because sometimes we don't like to be challenged either, right? Because it's tiring. Because I have a 3-year-old, man, it's like, oh, it said so, just do that, right? So sometimes we want that person because we're tired and we don't want to be challenged, but in reality we know we want that person because it's going to better the organization. And the true innovative ones are that, right? Emotional intelligence, soft skills, employability. Someone comes up to me at least every conference. It hasn't happened yet, so don't do this to me. Like, I don't like the term soft skills. That's cool. What do you want to call them? Employability skills. Good. That's what I do. Employability skills. Because it doesn't matter what you call it. It's still the same stuff. Showing up on time, having a positive attitude, communicating clearly, being a team player when sometimes, it's happened to me, right? I'm working at Buffalo Wild Wings and the manager tells me to mop up the puke in the bathroom. Do I really want to do that? No, but I'm going to because it looks like crap. and I want to be professional. But this is the new yardstick. That's why you're all here right now today. Because you know it, right? So what I want to do is, well, too far. Enough of me talking about it. You guys are like, yeah, I know, that's why I'm here. Yeah, you're right. Real life examples. At L'Oreal, sales agents, so the cosmetics company, sales agents selected on emotional competence outsold salespeople using old procedures on an annual sales basis of almost $100,000, $91,370. That's crazy. There was also 63% less turnover for those salespeople. They're eliminating the turnover cycle. They're getting more revenue. The salespeople are making more commission. Everyone's happy. In a large beverage firm, 50% of division presidents left after 2 years. So half. When they use emotional competencies to hire, 6% left after 2 years. On top of that, emotional intelligence is the new yardstick. Soft skills are the new yardstick. Having these emotional understandings of yourself and others is the new yardstick. Now, this is an individual. We call it a well-adjusted individual. There's a great deal of overlap between reality in blue and their self-image, right? Hence the green, the overlap. This person is very in touch with themselves. Their awareness is on point. You ask them a question that they're a teammate, they're a leader, you look up to them, they drive the organization. You ask other people, they say the same exact thing. That overlap is there, it's consistent. It's healthy. And then here's an image of, right, you guessed it, a poorly adjusted individual. This is why you're here today. These are the kids that if you were to ask them, so how do you show up to work? You're on time a lot? You're a good team player? Your boss talks to you about how to be better and handle that criticism really well? And they'll say yes. Right? Yes. And then you ask their parents, they ask you, they ask their boss, and they look at you like you have 6 heads. They're like, what? Who's that? It's not Johnny. There's a little bit of overlap between reality and their self-image. Okay? And this is what we're trying to do when we assess and teach these 8 soft skills. So number 1 is social skills. Social skills. Things like interpersonal, controlling your emotions, socializing at work, networking, responding to conflict, helping customers. So for controlling your emotions, let's take a look at Johnny as that example I talked about, the turnover process. He wasn't able to compartmentalize. We're differentiating the instruction all based off that initial assessment. So students are only going through what they lack, right? In other words, they've tested out of attitude, they're not going to go through that unit. The cutoff score is, so I got all of them, but the cutoff score is 70%, which is why I have all of them assigned. If they get above 70, then it won't appear here on the screen that you're looking at. From there, they can go ahead and go into the curriculum for the units. So for example, I'm breaking down meter rules, sorry guys. For example, we're going to go through planning and organizing.
Are so important in your workplace. Whether you're working on the most basic task or a long-term project, planning and organizing skills ensure that details aren't overlooked and mistakes aren't made. No matter how big or small.
Unless you're superhuman, it's impossible to do 5 things at once. Although sometimes you might feel like you have so much to do that it would be helpful if you could do 5 things at once. That's where knowing how to prioritize comes in handy.
So in this program, we have over 700 videos like this, 30 to 60 seconds, like micro learning. And And the reason I always use too is like the first thing you look at when you go to YouTube when you're trying to find something is what? Time. I do not want a 6-minute video. I'm out. Students are the same way. So we have these micro learning pieces in here, 30 to 60 seconds max, going through the various competencies of these soft skills. So we're going to go through planning and organizing. We're going to go through attitude. We're going to go through communication. We're going to go through professionalism. Each one of these units has 1 to 2 hours of content. Again, a lot of videos, a lot of slides, a lot of information. At the very end, I'm not going to go through it all, because it's taking a while. There's a post-assessment to document any changes in growth. So if I scored a, whatever, 30% in critical thinking or planning and organizing, and then I go through the planning and organizing unit, and then at the end I go through a post-test and I scored 70, we're going to have that data. All right, we're going to go through all that information.